Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob and the first son of Rachel, the wife Jacob loved the most. My name is Daniel Canagero, and in this video we will understand everything the Bible says about the story of Joseph. A book writing describes the whole dispute between Rachel and Leah, the two wives of Jacob. Rachel was sterile and suffered by not being able to give children of his womb to Jacob. But the biblical text says that God remembered Rachel and made her fertile. So she gave birth to Joseph and then Benjamin. The name Joseph comes from Hebrew and means that he adds or may add in order to refer to God to add children. Such a meaning is clarified in Genesis 30, verse 24. Popularly, Joseph, the son of Jacob, became known as Joseph of Egypt. Of course, this designation is due to the way God exalted him among the Egyptians. Jose was born in Padarah, about 6 years before Jacob returned to Canaan. At that time, the patriarch was about 90 years old. The Bible indicates that Joseph was Jacob's favorite son, for besides being his son of old age, he was also the son of Rachel. Joseph won a special Jacob tunic, which demonstrated his predilection. Another fact that exemplifies this condition as a preferred child is the episode of the reunion between Jacob and Esau. At that time, Jose and Raquel were placed in the safest place of the entourage. Some scholars argue that the tunic that Jacob gave to Jose as a gift may be a sign that his father intended to make Joseph his main heir. But the truth is that there is not really solid base to consider this hypothesis as certain. Biblical history also reveals that Joseph's brothers clearly had some envy and discontent about him. But it was after Joseph's dreams that the situation became even more complicated. In these two dreams, Joseph's family bowed before him. These dreams were fulfilled when their brothers went to Egypt to be able to buy wheat due to hunger that plagued the region. At that time, Jose was already the governor of Egypt. But first, the Bible says that one day Joseph was sent by his father to find his brothers and check how the flock was. However, motivated by jealousy, Joseph's brothers planned to kill him, but were prevented by his older brother, Reuben. Then they thrown him into a pit and, as a caravan of Ishmaelites, had the idea of selling it to Sia. Finally, when the caravan arrived in Egypt, Joseph was sold by the Midianites to Potiphar, who was a Pharaoh officer. Joseph began to thrive at Potiphar's house until he was promoted to the house's supervisor. Potiphar's wife began to be interested in Joseph and even tried to seduce him. But Joseph was fearfully to God and rejected that woman. In the last attempt at seduction, Potiphar's wife managed to get Joseph's clothes in his hands. So she took the opportunity to use this as an accusation tool against Joseph. The husband of that wife eventually believed in the accusation made by her and sent Joseph to the arrest. The arrest that Joseph was in Egypt was for political prisoners. But even in a hostile place, Joseph was blessed by God and soon occupied a prominent position among the prisoners. In prison, he met two staff of the Pharaoh court, the baker and the cupbearer. Both dreamed of one night and was up to Joseph to interpret such dreams. It is noteworthy here that dreams in the Eastern culture of the time were considered nursing and faced with great seriousness and importance in people's lives. The cope dreamed of a 3-branched vine that sprouted, flourished, and gave grapes, which he squeezed in the Pharaoh cup and handed him. This dream meant that within 3 days the cope would be taken from prison and would return to the original position that belonged to him. After playing the dream, Joseph asked the cope to remember him when he was with Pharaoh, so that he could be released from that prison. Already the baker, in turn, he dreamed that on his head there were 3 baskets. In the top basket there were several types of bread and sweets that Pharaoh liked, but they came birds and ate from the basket that was on his head. The interpretation of this dream was that in 3 days Pharaoh would take his head out of the baker, hang him on a tree, and the birds would eat his flesh. So, spending about 2 years of the interpretation of dreams in prison, it was Pharaoh's turn to have a dream. None of his wizards and counselors could give him the interpretation. That's when the cope remembered Joseph and spoke to him to Pharaoh, who sent him to call him in the palace. Pharaoh told Joseph the dreams he had had. In the first dream, Pharaoh was by the Nile River and saw 7 fat cows that began to graze. Soon after, there were 7 lean cows that ate the fat cows. Even after they eaten the fat cows, they remained thin. In the second dream, Pharaoh saw 7 ears of cereal that were good and grew in the same foot. Then he saw 7 dry and bad ears that swallowed the 7 good ears. Joseph then told Pharaoh that both dreams were actually just one. This dream corresponded to what God would do. There would be upon the land of Egypt 7 years of plenty. But then there would be 7 years of hunger so severe that they would make the times of abundance forgotten. In addition to giving Joseph the interpretation of the dream, God also granted him wisdom so that he would present an action plan to Pharaoh, so that Egypt could overcome the 7 years of crisis. Pharaoh put Joseph as the second man of Egypt, below only him. The function occupied by Joseph was called in the ancient East a vizier. It was the main administrative position that involved various functions, such as being in charge of treasury, justice, and execution, and supervision of real decrees. After being placed in the position of governor of Egypt, Jose received the Egyptian name of Zaphanatipania and married Azanatiah, daughter of a priest of On. Jose and Azanatia had 2 children, Manasseh and Ephraim. Later, Joseph's 2 sons would represent his father among the children of Jacob in the distribution of the tribes of Israel. With the hunger that plagued the earth, the reputation that Egypt had maintained grew. This made Joseph's brothers there in search of help. At first, only Joseph recognized them. Later, however, after some tests by Joseph, the governor of Egypt revealed his true identity to his brothers. That was a meeting loaded with emotion. After the revelation of his identity, Joseph tried to bring his father and his whole family to Egypt. Pharaoh also supported Joseph's decision. Later, when his father died, Joseph took care of the preparations for Jacob's burial. He ordered Jacob to be embalmed according to Egyptian custom and buried him in Canaan, as his desire was. Finally, after his long story, Joseph understood that everything had been God's plan, and that, through his life, Israel was preserved. Joseph then lived the rest of his days in Egypt. He reached the 3rd generation of his children and died at the age of 110. Before he died, Joseph recalled the promise God had made to his parents, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that the people would inherit the promised land. Then he asked when God took the Israelites from there that his remains would also be taken by them. It was thus, then, that Joseph died confident in the promise of the Lord. Later, in Moses' time, Joseph's desire was remembered, and his bones were taken from Egypt, as recorded in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 19. Joseph was buried in Shem, in a piece of land that his father Jacob had.
If something in you became quieter, clearer, or maybe even more restless after this video, then it was already worth it. Let us know what you felt, tell us your city, and if you can, subscribe and send it to someone who would appreciate this too. These little actions help the message go further. Thank you, Big Hug, and see you in the next video.